from. We're going to get started in just a minute once I see the participant count slow down. I know it takes a minute for everybody's computers to get them into the Zoom session. So say hi. If you haven't said hi yet, say it hi in the chat. Hey, Abby, Bo, Wanda. Oh my gosh, I have so many friends that are in here. Alyssa. Okay, I feel really good. I think this might be, of all the webinars I've done where I know the most people in the audience, this is probably that one. So hi, especially to some of my peeps. All right, I think the participant count has slowed down now. So I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. So a couple of housekeeping matters. This is a Zoom webinar, which works a little bit differently than a Zoom meeting. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see there's a Q&A. That's not usually there on a Zoom meeting, but it is on a webinar. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is, as we go through the session, put your questions in the Q&A. Don't put them in the chat. There will be a segment where we'll go through questions, and actually they'll be answered, some of them in the background while we're continuing the presentation, but we will look in the Q&A for questions, not the chat. So put your questions there. We will share information with you in the chat. Sometimes we'll be talking about something, and one of our webinar queens, as we like to call them, we have a handful of folks in the background. Kayla, Lacey, Kara are usually with us, and they are posting great information in the chat as we're going through something. So we'll share information with you in the chat. You share your questions in the Q&A. Okay. All right. So I am Serona Elton. I'm the head of educational partnerships for the Mechanical Licensing Collective, the MLC. Welcome. We have a great presentation for you today. I want to make the point that today's session is very focused. Sometimes we have general sessions where we just tell you about who we are and we take all kinds of questions. Today is very specifically focused on royalty statements. And so if you could please focus your questions on that for today, that would be really great. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, walk you through exactly what we're going to cover for today. All right, so let me get that screen up. All right, and here we go. Okay. So for today, you have three of us who are going to be talking to you. I'm going to kick us off by a quick overview of the blanket royalties process. And then I'm going to be followed by my colleague, Lindsay Major, our head of customer experience. She is going to show you how to find and download your royalty statement in the MLC portal. And then we're going to be followed by my colleague, Maurice Russell, our head of rights management. He is going to explain to you how to understand your royalty statement. And once we've gone through those three presentations, we'll then come out of screen sharing and work our way through the Q&A. It might be the case that Lindsay and Maurice and our webinar queens might answer some of your questions during the session as well. So some things will get answered before we get to the Q&A portion. All right, so I'm going to jump right into what I'm going to tell you about. So what I really want to make sure you understand is the timeline for this. And so we're really proud of the fact that we got out our inaugural set of royalty statements. A lot of you have been in the industry a long time, I'm sure, and have been involved in royalty system implementations. They are some of the most challenging things to ever do. And we're really proud of the fact that we got these statements out. And so what I want to make sure you understand is the timeline between when activity happens on a streaming service to when you might see it on your royalty statement. Okay. So the way this works is, and this, by the way, this is a diagram that is on our website. I'm sure we'll post in the chat where you can find this. So don't worry if I move off the slide in a minute. This exact diagram and the little table there on the right, that is on our website. So you can look at that at any time. And so if you look at the timeline up there in the top left, let's pretend that you had a stream happen in the month of January. The timeline for when you would see that on the royalty statement begins after the January month end. So after the end of the month of January, then we see this clock start of 75 days or so, 75 days where there's a process that takes place where we lock down the data to start analyzing that and comparing it to the usage reports that we get from the digital services. The way it works is generally they send us a data file, we do some analysis on it, we send them back a confirmation of information, they send us the money, and we're ingesting all of that data. We're matching up sound recording usage to musical works ownership information, and then ultimately directly paying you. And so that process takes some time. In terms of the DSP doesn't usually send that to us like February 1st, for example. They have some time that they're allowed by federal regulation until they report that to us, and then we ingest it and the process carries on. So the way it works, a stream that happens in January, that would end up on your royalty statement 75 days after that. So that would be mid-April in the case of the first set of statements. And so if you look at the table on the right, this will help you get a sense of when the activity happens, which month statement you can see that on. And obviously, if that assumed that when that stream happened in January, in that early February, day 10, we take this snapshot of our database, that your musical works information was in the database by then. If let's say, you've just found out last week there's an MLC and they might have money for me, what? And so you've now just finally gone in, you're getting a musical works data set up. You will get those January streams on the next statement that happens after your musical works are in there on day 10. So that's the timeline about how this is all going to work with the blanket royalty reporting that the digital services have to send to us and our turnaround time to get that money to you. And so with that, I'm actually going to come out of screen share and I'm going to bring on my colleague, Lindsay. Say hi, Lindsay. There she is. All right. So I'm going to go off of the camera and let Lindsay now show you how to find your royalty statement in the portal.
Great. Thanks, Serona. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So the portal profile that we're looking at the moment, it is a test profile. So the data you see here is test data. It's not real. Just want to set that caveat so you don't think I'm giving you access to somebody else's data. So when you log into the portal, so first I'm going to show you how to find the statements in the portal. So when you log in, this is the screen that you land on. You'll click View Member down here. And you can see there is a royalty section on the left-hand side. Now, if you click royalties, it brings you to this really helpful home screen that gives you a lot of really good information. You can download your payee activity. You can go directly to your statements here. I do want to call out there are these links at the bottom as well that give you some information about, like the view distribution notes gives you some information about the DSP activity. We did have some, if you're looking for, let's say you're somebody who received a payment from us, but your bank needed some sort of certification to allow the payment to come in, you can go ahead and download this distribution certification. It should get you all set up with your bank to receive payment from us. So this is just kind of a snapshot of helpful information you need to know. Your statements you can access by clicking View Statement or by just clicking this on the left-hand side. You need to give it a sec to kind of load, but you'll be able to toggle down by the appropriate payee. You'll also be able to filter here by the usage period you're interested in looking at, as well as the DSP. And then as you can see on the left-hand side here, this allows you to select whichever statement you're interested in downloading. When you continue to the download, it gives you options on how you'd like to download your information. So it really, in any kind of visualization that you'd like to see, we can kind of accommodate that. This download will go to your email. We did fix this. The email, the link, it will be a TSV file. Maurice is going to show you how to download that TSV file in the next section. But this will be how you download the statements. One thing I did want to call out before I pass it off to my colleague Maurice is we do send an email to members when they have their statements available in the portal to them. We will continue to do that on a monthly basis. So you kind of have that trigger to say, hey, you've been paid, go see your statement. This is the first time we've done this. So there were emails that went out to members that didn't have statements available. The only reason you wouldn't have a statement available in the portal is because your works were not registered by the time we took the snapshot, which is what Serona kind of talked about. You can pretty much plan on if your works are not registered by the 10th of the month, they won't make it into that distribution. That's not to say that you won't get paid. You'll just get paid in the next distribution. So wanted to clarify, because I know that caused some confusion. If you received an email saying your statement's ready, but you didn't have a statement, it's just because the works weren't registered for that snapshot. And then lastly, before I bring Maurice out, if you are somebody who needed to update your banking or tax information, you can find that under member settings to banking information, and you can go ahead and update it directly in the portal through this integration. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and pass it off to Maurice.
Actually, Lindsay, can you just go back to the download options? I just wanted to start with that. Hello, everyone. Let's just start by talking about the beginning of the download process, which is once you've made your selections, you have a couple of choices to make. One is the format, whether you want the work summary format or the royalty detail format. The work summary format summarizes all of the reporting at the work level by DSP. The royalty detail format provides all of the track level royalty data based on the usage reporting that we received from the DSPs. It's much more granular. And I know many larger organizations that have to prepare royalty accountings to third parties need that level of detail. The other decision you have to make is, do you want a consolidated file, which would consolidate all of the statements that you checked in the menu, or do you want them downloaded individually? Once you have made your choices and the statements you'll receive an email, and it'll take you a few minutes. You'll open the email, there'll be a link, and then you will click on the link and save the file to your desktop. And then, thanks, Lindsay. But before we get there, let me just share my screen. A reminder that we have a royalty section on the website at themlc.com. If you go to how it works and blanket royalties, in this top section, you will see information about royalty statements, and you'll be able to actually download the layout for the royalty detail and for the work summary formats. And you can use those as a guide as you review your royalty statements. It would be pretty helpful. This is an example of the layout for the royalty detail. And as you can see, it goes field by field, and there are 62 fields, so there's quite a bit. So I would think that you would probably want to have something to help you guide through the data the first couple of times that you do it. Provides information about the characters in the field length, a description, and example of what the data might look like. And then let's go back to the download process. You've received your email, you've clicked on the link, you've saved your file to your desktop. The next thing you want to do is to be able to open it. I'm using Windows, and I know that not everyone uses Windows. If you are doing this on a Mac and you have any questions, you should contact support at themlc.com, and they will assist you with the process. But on a Mac, you would open a blank Excel file, go to Data, click from text/CSV, and then you want to grab your file. It's here in Downloads. Now you want to make sure, it may be set to text files. You want to make sure that you go to All Files so that it shows all files. This is the file, import, give it a second. And when you get to this point, you want to just click Load. Again, give it a second. And you'll have a formatted download of your royalty statement. Now that we have the royalty statement, wanted to just review some of the key highlights, fields that you might need a little help with. Obviously, there's 62, so I'm not going to go through all of them. They're broken up roughly into sections. The first fields describe the distribution, so the actual distribution period and the date of the distribution. The fields that follow that, let me just get this out of the way, focus on member entities, and starting with the member, the member MLC number, which is the unique identifier for your account, your member name, your IPI, and your member ISNI if you have one. And that information is provided for your payee, your administrator, if you have an administrator, and then the original publisher. So all of those are grouped together. We start with those entity fields, and then we move on to information about the actual use, starting with the usage period. Again, this is test data, so I'm not showing you anyone's data, and it may not make sense from a logic perspective. For this period, you probably saw a usage period start date January 1st, 2021, and period January 31st, 2021. The DSP identifier is a unique identifier for the DSP. DSP name, pretty straightforward. Then there's information about the consumer offering, which ties into how the royalty is calculated, because this actually ties to rate types. If you want to tie this to a rate type, you should consult that particular DSP's rate sheet, which is provided for you in the royalty section of the portal. If the DSP operates under a storefront other than their DSP name, that would be indicated here. The use type would be either streaming or download. The voluntary license identifier really refers to direct licenses. This would only be populated if the MLC were administering a voluntary license on behalf of the DSP, of a DSP. It currently is not, so this, for this foreseeable future, probably will not be populated. Next is the MLC song code, which is the same as the HFA song code for those of you that work with HFA. It's a unique identifier for the song. And then the member song identifier is if you submit your work registrations with your own specific work ID, it will be returned to you in the royalty file. These fields are pretty straightforward. They describe the work itself, the title, the writer, etc. The DSP track ID is a unique identifier that the DSP uses to identify the track on its service. These other unique identifiers for recordings, I think you probably know, ISRC, recording title. Once we get beyond the track level data, we get to the product level data. There's an ICPN. This is basically very similar to a UPC in the US. I believe this is an international code, but it's essentially the same idea. It's a unique identifier at the product level. Let's continue. These fields are important. Processing type, there are two processing types, regular and reprocessing. Regular processing are royalties that are earned in the royalty period. Reprocessing would be populated if there were prior period royalties or if there was a royalty adjustment. If there's a royalty adjustment, the correction indicator will also be populated with either correction or reversal to indicate whether there's a positive or negative adjustment. And again, this will only be populated if there is an adjustment. Moving on, you will, oops, little trigger happy there. Let's go back. The usage information is basically for streams, the number of plays, for downloads, the number of downloads. The long track adjusted usage is important because in certain instances, if a recording runs longer than 5 minutes, it affects the rate by basically bumping up the usage counts. So this is what would actually get used in the royalty calculation. The effective royalty rate is the rate that would be applicable to the entire work. The share adjusted royalty rate is the rate that would be applicable to your share only. The publisher royalty amount is the total amount of royalties that you're being paid in the period. And then there's a column for late fees and for interest to the extent either one is paid to you. Late fees would be paid if a DSP reported to us late. They would be required under the statute to pay late fees, and those would be passed on to you. And interest to the extent that there are any instances that require us to release interest to you. And that could be, for example, in the case of unmatched royalties that get matched and paid, and then followed by the total distribution amount. So there you go. And I'm going to turn it back over now to Sirona.
All righty. Thank you, Maurice. Thanks. Let's see. My screen still looks like you're screen sharing. Are you able to
I
hear
am
me?
stopping. Yes.
Okay.
There we go.
You never know if you're frozen or someone else is frozen, you know.
Yes, I am lost in the spreadsheets. I'm back. I'm back now.
You're back. Okay, fantastic. All right, so we've been answering some questions in the Q&A as we have gone along, and so there's a couple of them here. I'm gonna try to farm them out to Lindsay and Maurice, and run through them. And you know, sometimes we get a lot of them, so we try to scan and find the ones that a lot of people are asking the same question, right? To make sure we try to cover those off first. Okay, so I think this one's probably good for Maurice. So how is the long track adjusted usage calculated, right? And for those who may not know what that means, I'm guessing what they mean is a recording that is longer than 5 minutes. I'm guessing, but Maurice, you'll correct me if
I think that's what he's referring to. For streams, there is a factor of 0.2 that gets applied for each minute over 5 minutes. So if it's 6 minutes, it'll be 1.2. Will be the actual number of plays, and that would be what would be included in that long play field.
Awesome. Okay, so here's another question. This I don't know. I'll let Maurice and Lindsay arm wrestle for this one. Okay. So Abby, hi Abby. Abby asks, looking at her statement, she sees hundreds of rows with no royalty information. So there are cells in column BE through BJ that are not populated. Also, her internal work IDs are mostly absent in column AD. You know, what might cause that? Will she start to see some of those work IDs on future statements? Anything you can speak to about what might leave those columns blank, especially Maurice, maybe?
Her internal work ID is only going to be passed back if it was populated when she submitted. If you believe that you submitted it and it's not coming back, I think that that's a support issue. So you should definitely contact us about that. I would say in general, and again, if you look at the layout, which I suggested you use as a guide, you'll notice that there are a lot of fields that are optional. So we can only populate it if we receive it. The fields that you refer to seems odd that they
BJ,
yeah, the payment fields. I would need more information. So I think you should definitely, and Abby, you and I connect all the time. So reach out and let's discuss it.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So here's one. So do we know at this stage if there may be a royalty interface in the future between the MLC statement data and Music Maestro? I don't know. Do you know the answer to that one, Maurice?
I believe that it's in the works, but you should contact Vistex, who own Music Maestro, for the details.
Great. Okay. All right. So I'm just looking through. So Ryan asks, are we able to merge or roll up multiple payees to create one parent statement that includes all payees?
I mean, in the portal, you do have to select the payee from the dropdown. Now, you could probably accomplish this by selecting consolidated when you download the file type, and it will like combine them all into one. So that's probably the best way to go if that's what you're looking to do. But in the portal, no, you do have to select a payee.
Okay. But, you know, I also just want to say overall, these are early days. This is our first royalty, you know, rendering, and we love getting feedback about features that we could add in the future that might make it easier for you to do what you need to do. So don't hesitate to share those with us. You know, we get to add these kinds of things on the roadmap and see what we're hearing from multiple people, and that helps us prioritize down the line what additional features to add, because we are never just done with our systems. All right. So question about the rate that's being applied. So specifically, I see a question here from Lisa, who is saying, you know, in 2020, the Harry Fox agency, they confirmed they were paying the 2020 we call Phono 3 rate. And let me be clear, so people understand what that means, right? The royalty rate that is paid is the statutory royalty rate that is set by something called the Copyright Royalty Board, which is a three panel of judges that set that royalty rate. And there was a decision made about a rate to be used that was then appealed. And it's now come back to the Copyright Royalty Board for further deliberation, I'll put it simply. And so the rate that we had to use is not necessarily that rate. And when those rates are published, we name them Phono Records 1, Phono Records 2, Phono Records 3, and sometimes the shorthand is Phono 1, Phono 2, Phono 3, just so you know what that terminology means. So Maurice, having said all that, what is the royalty rate that's being applied to the statements at the moment?
It's the Phono 2 rates, which have a top line percentage of 10.5%, and they will continue until there's a decision made by the copyright royalty judges who are reviewing it based on the challenges that were made by the DSPs. And once a decision is made on what the rates will be, there'll either be a true up or a true down, and we'll have to retroactively adjust the rates.
Thanks for that. Okay, here's a question probably either of you guys could tackle. If the song on the statement has a number of uses, how do you figure out how many of them are for streams versus downloads? Excuse me, my voice went downloads. How many? How can you tell which are streams?
It's indicated. We have a field for that. It is the use type field, which will be populated with either streaming or downloads.
Okay, there we go. All right, so Sherry asks, so the royalty amount is reflected in 10 digits beyond the decimal point. Talk about micro pennies, right? When you distribute royalties, you're dispersing whole dollar values out to the 2 decimal places, right? Are you using rounding to determine the disbursement of value? And if so, what type of rounding formula? How do we get from the 10 digits to an actual amount of cents that we pay?
In terms of rounding formula, I believe it's sort of the customary way of rounding. Any micro pennies are carried over to the next statement in the opening balance.
Okay, awesome. All right, let me try and give Maurice a breath for a second. Let's see. I'm having a look. I think you might have answered this one, Lindsay, but they may not have seen that answer. Is there a minimum balance for payment?
Yeah, so for direct deposit or ACH, however you know that by, it's $5. For check, it will be $100, and for wire transfer, it's $250, I believe. But I think for international direct deposits, the minimum might actually be $100, not $5. And yeah, those are, I'm pulling up the sheet now to make sure I got that right. Those are the correct minimums.
All right, awesome, thank you. So I have a question from Brian about collecting past royalties. How many years back can you track, and can we still collect? So I'll tackle that one for a second. So some of you guys might have heard in the news, or you might have seen it on our website, that back in February, we received, it was transferred to us from the digital services, they're what we call historical unmatched, the historical unmatched. And what those were are their usage activity and the related royalties going back in time, where the service was not able to find and pay the rights holder. So the copyright law, the Music Modernization Act, set up a scenario where if those digital services transferred that activity and that money to the MLC, there were certain legal benefits to them to doing so. And so when we got that data, we made it instantly, like the next day, put it up on our website. So under the How It Works section on our website, there's a special page called Historical Unmatched. And if you go there, you can see how much money was transferred from each of the digital services that transferred it to us. You can see what time periods that applies to. Now, the way the law worked, the federal regulations worked, is they had to transfer data and money to us in February. But they also have until mid-June to finish transferring the second piece of data to us that we need in order to start really processing that through to pay people. And so we're not at that stage yet, but we expect to be later this year, in which case, if you've never been paid at all for your digital mechanicals from the services that you can see have sent us historical unmatched activity, at some point we will have that money for you. But it will be sometime after we get that second load of data. And I can't even remember how many data bytes and billions or trillions of rows of data it was. You have to look on the website, but we'll be getting another truckload of data in mid-June, and it's going to take us some time to process that into the system and pay it out. But we are expecting to still do that within this year. Just don't know exactly what month statement you'll see it on, but it will be there at some point. Okay, so let me now go back to reading. All right, let's see.
Hey, Serona.
Yeah,
sorry,
go for it,
real
Lindsay.
quick. I've answered a few of these in the chat, and I just think it's worth bringing up because I keep seeing it come up. We are working, there's a lot of people who are having a hard time with the TSV file. Totally hear you there. We are presently working on offering more file formats. So stay tuned, we're working on it. But again, if you have a hard time downloading your statement, reach out to the support team. They have instructions available, and we can also just download your statement for you and send it to you. So, but we have heard you. We're working on additional file formats for you.
Thanks, Lindsay. There's just one follow-up question here to what I said about the historical unmatched, saying what happens to songs that were unmatched in general? Can we search and claim them? So there are additional features coming to our portal very soon in the next couple of months, where you will be able to see where we have not been able to match up the digital, the sound recording usage to a musical work. You will be able to see that, search through that, and if those are recordings of your musical works, you'll be able to claim them. So those are some additional features that we'll be rolling out in the summertime, we expect. We'll be telling everybody when that happens. We'll be made aware of it. And so to me, the best thing you can do to make sure you know the instant that that's there is make sure you're following us on socials, make sure our emails to you are not going to spam, and that you're signed up for our newsletter. So you'll be the first to know when that claiming capability and that searching capability is there. So that will be coming soon. Okay, so going back up here, I think this is a good question because I know I tackled one of these as well in the Q&A. I think maybe this is either one of you guys could tackle this one. So can somebody who is not a member of the MLC, but let's say a collaborator on a work, can they audit statements through the MLC? Can they see the royalty statements? If, let's say, they are a songwriter, but they are not the member, they're not the party that has registered the work with the MLC, are they able to see royalty statements?
So there's a few answers to this question, so I'll try to explain that. So depending on the situation, let's say there you have a member, if the person who kind of owns and manages that member account adds you as a user to that member and gives you the proper permissions to see the statements, then yes, you can. But again, it's whoever has the right to administer those works who will have that member account and will be able to make that decision. So it kind of depends on what that relationship is. Now, if you are like a songwriter who's hoping for access to, and you're published, and you're hoping for access to that member, that's not probably going to be something that publisher is going to feel comfortable doing, just because there's a lot of data that they're managing. So what I would recommend, if you're looking to like consolidate statements, is working directly with that publisher. But unless you have access to a member from a user account, you're not going to be able to see the statements. So but you can reach out to your publisher and kind of see if there's something you can figure out in terms of visibility into those statements.
Awesome, thanks. Okay, so let's see here, a couple more. Okay, I'm going to send this one to you, Maurice. We have a couple questions in here, as we always do, but this is royalty related, about the MLC versus the Harry Fox agency, in terms of what are they going to get reported on what statement, what would be on a statement from HFA, what would be on a statement from the MLC, and confirming that if they are, let's say, an affiliate of HFA, will they be getting a statement from the MLC? Maybe that's something that you could tackle, Maurice.
So the MLC collects and distributes audio, digital mechanicals under a blanket license. So pretty much digital license that are subject to compulsory licensing under the statute will flow through the MLC. The MLC is the exclusive agency that has the ability to make, or exclusive organization authorized to administer the license and pay royalties. So you'll be paid through us unless you have a direct license with a publisher. HFA is a vendor to the MLC and provides data and other technical support to the MLC, but it also has its own businesses. So it may be accounting to you for non-Section 115, non-compulsory type uses. So if you are registered with HFA, do you have to become a member of the MLC? You don't have to, but if you want to be accounted to and to receive digital audio mechanicals, you probably should. Any works that you register with HFA will be shared with the MLC, so you definitely do not, and you should not register those works twice. So we work together in this one area. The MLC pays you for digital audio mechanicals, but HFA may pay you for other rights. So if you have any questions about things outside of what the MLC does, you should consult with HFA.
Awesome, thanks. Okay, so here is a question that probably either of you could tackle, from Nancy. Can the royalties remain in my account until I request them to be dispersed? I know in some things out there, like with some digital distributor, for do-it-yourself artists, the money can accumulate until you decide to accept a payment. How does the payment process work with the MLC in terms of, will the payments just go out, or can the person control when they get paid?
So if I can take that one. At the moment, if a member is payable, so that means that their banking and tax information is up to date and correct, and they meet the minimum threshold of royalties, then the payment will go out. However, I could see why that would be something you'd be interested in, so we can kind of see. But at the moment, yeah, if you're a payable entity and you meet the minimum threshold, there's not really a way to kind of like save that up. So we'll look into that and see what the options might be.
Yeah, maybe, if that's really a really critical thing to you, maybe contact support. Maybe there's a way to make you unpayable so the amount keeps rolling forward or something. But talk to support and they'll see how they can help you. Okay, let's see. So I'm running down this one. Some of these were answered already. Okay, so maybe this one for you, Maurice. Is there a relationship between the MLC and MCPS? And let me expand this question a little bit, right? MCPS is an organization based in the UK. They are the mechanical rights organization in the UK that has members, like the MLC has members, but they are able to collect internationally on behalf of their members. And so from a royalty flow process, Maurice, maybe you can just speak a little bit about how somebody who might be a member of MCPS in the UK, for example, how the royalties are going to flow to them.
So if they are affiliated with MCPS, MCPS, like many CMOs, can affiliate with the MLC to collect for digital audio mechanicals in the US. So they would in many ways be like a publisher. So we would account to them and then they would account to their publishers and writers.
Yeah, I think that
we do
covers it.
not have but we do not have a reciprocal arrangement with them because the MLC's purview is only the territory of the US. So we can't collect and pay for foreign territories.
And you kind of tackled another question that I was going to go to next. You know, people are asking, how do they collect their international mechanical royalties, right? So we're not allowed to do that by law. The law has authorized us specifically to administer this US blanket license. We're not allowed to collect from international organizations. There's a variety of ways that you could do that. You know, your publisher, publishing administrator might have the rights to collect on a worldwide basis. It's just not something that we can do for you. So if you're a self-administered songwriter, you should look into different publishing administration options that might include global collections. Unfortunately, we're not able to do that, not by the law. Okay, so we're getting close in here. There was one more question from Brian about the historical unmatched. I know it's a popular topic. How many years back can you go from the beginning of paid royalty streaming? So the historical unmatched, generally speaking, goes back to the beginning of when the different services started operating. And then in terms of, you know, how long do you have from now forward to get your data set up so that you can get paid any monies that are due to you. That's also something that is set by the copyright law. The copyright law actually lays out a particular timeline, a minimum amount of time that has to take place before the MLC might take what it is still got in unmatched and then distribute that out to everybody who collected mechanical royalties on a proportionate share basis. A market share, if you will, distribution basically means everybody who got mechanicals of some kind would get some of that. The law says there's a minimum amount of time for that. Generally speaking, for everything under the blanket license from January of this year forward, that's a 3-year period. Of the minimum amount of time, we have to keep trying to find you. And so it might be that we continue trying to find people longer than that. So in terms of going backwards in time for the historical unmatched, we're going to try to match everything that we got. And for a lot of services, that's back to when they started operating. And in terms of time for you to get your musical works ownership data in there, you don't have to get it in there tomorrow, but definitely you would want to get it in there. You know, I think if I was being proactively, I would not want to wait more than 3 years to get that data set up. And hey, it's money, like why wait at all, right? Get it set up so that you can start getting paid. So hopefully that kind of answers that question for you. Okay, so let me go back to looking here at questions. All right, so Eddie is asking, do you collect only compulsory licenses? So I'll tackle this one. We are collecting only for uses that fall under this brand new blanket compulsory digital license, right? Or digital compulsory license, pick the order of words that you like. It only applies to digital compulsory mechanical licensing in the United States. So mechanical licensing is also involved if you're putting out a CD or a vinyl product. We are not involved in collecting royalties for physical mechanical licensing, only digital. Those are the royalties that we're collecting under this blanket compulsory license. Okay, let's see. We are almost done with the royalty questions. I think maybe here's one other one that I'll let you guys decide. This is from Andres. At his company, they produce compilation records for charities, and they get gratis licenses. In other words, they're granted a free license. They don't have to pay royalties, royalty-free license for use of the songs. Do we have to pay the MLC? How do we have the MLC pay those royalties to us as an organization rather than going to the rights holder? Is there a way to split revenues on the mechanical side? Okay. So I don't know, Maurice, you want to tackle that? I think the thing in here that strikes me is if you are obtaining a mechanical license from the publisher on a gratis basis, and you are not the party that controls the rights in those musical works, those royalties are not due to you. You're not entitled to collect mechanical royalties for songs that you don't administer. So I don't think you'd be collecting them from us. I don't know, Maurice, is there something else you may want to add to that?
Again, we administer licenses and collect from DSPs. So when the DSP uses that recording and reports the usage to us, we're going to report the statutory royalty rate to the rights holder, whoever that is.
Rights holder, exactly. And that doesn't sound like that's you in your example for those songs, because you said they're cover songs, cover records of songs you don't administer. All right, so I think at this point that covered really the royalties questions. So I think we can call it a wrap for now. Lindsay, you maybe just want to chime in to tell anybody if they still have any remaining questions, remind them of how they can get help to get the answers.
Yeah, of course. So our support team is available Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, and on Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. We've got a phone number, chat, contact us form, any flavor you can reach out to us. We also have our help center available. So I know our webinar queens are dropping that information in the chat. Feel free to reach out. We'll be able to help you. And if we can't help you, we'll get you to the person who can help you. So.
Fantastic. And we do also do other webinars that are on other topics. We have every month, there's one where we just tackle, whatever it is, like, what are you, how are you different than ASCAP, whatever it is, we'll tackle those on those webinars. So please do join us for a different session if your questions kind of fall into that category. All right, well, we're going to say goodbye for now. Have a great day. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye, everybody.